This week on RSBANDB Update, OSRS players join the cast to tell us about their experience with the League's Catalyst. From Relics, task, questing, progression, and power, we compare it to past old-school leagues. What can RS3 learn for the next league, and the game as a whole? This is RSBANDB Update, episode 1060, recorded Thursday, October 16th, 2025. Sprinting through wet concrete. Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of RSBANDB Update. This week we are going to be having a look at League's Catalyst with the perspective of some old school players to see what they thought of it coming into it, but of course, you're probably wondering who that is. If you've ever listened to the OSRS update, you of course will know Sirion.
I'm gonna be honest, it's weird being introduced as an OSRS player still. I don't know. It feels weird.
I was going to say that, and I don't want to jump in before my introduction, but I was going to say I appreciate being considered an old school player, but I consider myself an RS2 player that bled into RS3 and then kind of went back after I quote unquote completed RS3, and now I'm going through old school. But either way, it's always good to be here.
And that is, of course, Dave Arcane, who composed and produced the introduction music for both podcasts, who you guys hear each and every week. And, you know, a lot of people comment on that music, but they don't necessarily know the person behind it. So, you know, your work is heard each and every week. And if people are wondering where the music comes from, you made that. I think the version we're on right now came around in 2018, and before that we had a similar one, and you just made it sound a whole lot better and realistic back then in 2018.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about the other day, and it's like, man, thinking back, it's like we've had that for a long time. And
the reason we were talking about that was because you brought metal to RuneScape, which we had with the you know the league's Catalyst login track, and they seem to be fully embracing that now.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's super cool to see. I don't want to claim too much credit, but I mean, I was just thinking, it's like, man, that was so long ago. I mean, I just had a birthday, and, you know, I don't want to give too much away, but it's just like, man, like, we've been doing this for a long time, and, like, I wrote that a long time ago.
Yeah,
so,
I think
mean,
the original version was 2011.
Yeah, I was going to say that was... I mean, I want to say it was recorded on like a voice memo thing, but man, the technology has come such a long way with just quality and all that stuff. So it's super cool to see this go around. It's still going strong.
Yeah, you know, we go way back on that in terms of even before the music. So, Legends of RSBANDB Update here. But of course, if you guys want to follow along, full show notes can be found over at update.show. The Discord is at update.show/Discord. You can chat with us all in there. Let us know what you think of the episode, if you have anything to add to it, of course. And if you want to hang out in game, the friends chat can be found at BitsBytes. All right, so before we begin, we must give a big, huge thank you to our experienced tier Patreon members, because without them, this show would not be possible. This week, that is Amos Reed, Bladecom, Dominic R., Jade Gizmo, Jason S., Jesse W., Julia W., Kesky, Lemon Lodge, Luminos, Ricky A., Scio Aces, Snail Mage, The Naked Captain, and Tim. A big, huge thank you to all these people. You'll be hearing more about our Patreon offerings a little bit later in the podcast. Now, of course, one of the things that we wanted to dive into with this is just get a bit of your RuneScape and old school history, because, you know, many people I'm sure remember you, Sirion, from the podcast. But if for people who are just joining, how did you start on RS3? What brought you to old school, and what's the journey been like since?
Oh boy. I mean, I go very far back when it comes to RuneScape, to be honest. I started when I was 10. So, again, I don't want to really reveal too much personal information on the internet, perhaps. But that was the classic era for sure. I made an account in RS Classic, and there was a period of time I didn't play during sort of my middle school years, because, you know, playing online games was very uncool, and couldn't have that, of course. But I started playing again around 2011, I joined Clan Quest, I think either in the same year or the year after, I never remember, which sort of tells you about sort of the part I appreciate most about the RuneScape universe, which is the quests. Um, Over time, I stuck with RS3 basically through all of its controversies, through EOC, the Squeal, Treasure Hunter, Hero Pass. And it is sort of ironic that it was the response of Jagex to the feedback on Hero Pass that sort of did it for me.
And not Hero Pass itself. I want to underscore
And not
that.
Hero Pass itself. I actually really liked it. And I'll take there. Maybe a little bit controversial, but I really enjoyed Hero Pass. I think it was actually a good evolution. It had some rough edges, but and here we are, right? Where is that daily challenge rework that we were promised 3 years ago at this point?
2 and a bit.
Only 2.
Yeah,
Okay,
because that
fair
was right
enough.
after Necromancy in 23.
So that is when I did start dabbling in old school. We both did at that time. I think I sort of, tempted you with all of the old quests I was doing. And, that sort of brought back what I fell in love with initially with the game. I think if you're playing a game like RS3, because it changes over time, and if you play it continuously, you sort of go with the flow, right? And even if it deviates from what you really want to play and what you enjoy playing, you don't really notice because the changes are individually very small. But then the move to old school and be like, hey, actually this is exactly what I was sort of missing and what I was craving for. Let's just play this instead. And I just started playing RS3 less and less, and I haven't really logged in the past 2 years since League started.
All right. And you, Dave? Where do we begin with you?
Yeah, so ironically enough, it started that all my friends in grade school were playing, and I was the guy that's like, you guys are a bunch of nerds, and I thought it was the silliest thing, and then I made an account, and I'm pretty sure I'm the only one of that group of friends that still play these days. So started in 2004. I didn't go as far back as Classic, so I started in RS2. I got to see the release of Slayer before I really knew what that was and what that meant. Played through. I don't want to say off and on. I definitely wasn't super efficient. I got my first 99 in 2009, which was smithing, followed immediately a month later by runecrafting, and then I got construction. So definitely not the typical path for players in RuneScape at the time. That being said, I was not super efficient, and I actually didn't max in RS2 until 2015. So if you kind of know the timeline of RuneScape, that's kind of puts us through, like Sirion. I was kind of through all the drama with the EOC and stuff.
Hmm.
That came out. I just kind of rolled with the punches. I didn't love it, but there wasn't much of an option. And by the time that Old School came out, I had the sunk cost fallacy kind of spinning in my head. I was like,
Yeah,
I'm
same.
almost maxed. I don't want to start over. I'm just going to keep doing this, and kind of held some resentment for Old School for quite some years.
Oh, good. I'm glad somebody else has.
Yeah. So I mean, it was one of those things where, it started as like, oh, the community was like super toxic, and then it came to where they're getting an entire new continent, and it was more like bitterness. Like, I wish we would have, like, why didn't the game go this way, like when it was RS2,
Yeah,
right? It was just kind of.
I felt the exact same way, but I never associated it with what I wanted RS3 to be. It's because it's like, why is this thing that's supposedly the flagship not getting these content updates? Anyways,
At the time, it was supposed to be. I mean, that was the transition period. I kind of joke around. It was like, when Blu-ray was fighting HD DVD. It was
God,
like
that's a
07 Scape versus old school RuneScape. And like Old School came out because very quickly it was not just a copy of the 2007 server. So it was like, at the time I was like, oh, this is cool. This is like a novel thing. That's fine. It'll be boring when nothing else comes out. And then they're like, oh, there's a full development team. Oh, there's new continents. Like, there hadn't been new skills, but like it was a separate timeline. And I was like, oh my gosh, I was jealous. I mean, I was like, this is stuff I wished I could have had when I was in high school or when I was playing the game and maxing and doing all this stuff. So it held some resentment for quite a bit.
Dave is just giving away everything I'm about to say about RS3 leagues over the next hour or so.
So I maxed in 2015. Still hadn't touched old school. I just kind of kept investing, obviously, my time into RS3, into my account. I comped in 2016, and then I finally trimmed in 2019. And for lack of a better term, have kind of been in maintenance mode since 2019. In terms of when new content comes out, I just retrim.
That is really what it is, isn't it?
Yeah, just whether it be as small as like a quest coming out to, invention coming out, say divination came out before I maxed, but invention, archaeology, all those skills coming out and doing all that. And then once they kind of, I don't want to say like shadow updated, but all the 120s came out, and then like the new trim capes and completionist capes with getting basically virtually 120 all, so that gave me more stuff to do. So where I'm at right now in RS3 is I'm 2 skills away from 120 all to get that cape. I don't know if I'll end up going for 200 mil all, but that's where I'm at with RS3. And then if we rewind a little bit to necromancy, that came out, I think I was 99 in 3 days and like 120 in maybe a week or two, which isn't far behind kind of some of the world first. I definitely wasn't like up for 22 hours, but kind of went through that. And I guess prior to that, sorry, rewind maybe a year before, about 2022, I finally dipped my toes into old school. And I was like, it was just something for me to kind of do for fun. I mean, obviously it's a video game. I'm not like getting paid to play. But just, woodcut here, woodcut there, just a little break from RS3 when I was kind of sick of the big grind. And I was like, I just need some sort of a roadmap. So that's what kind of led me to the optimal quest guide on the wiki and gave me a little bit of direction. And that being said, like once you finish that, optimal quest guide, you have a pretty well-rounded account. You're usually about 70 plus all stats. And then it's like, okay, cool. Then you can like play the game and you're pretty well mid-game and have most of the things unlocked, right? So I had started playing that. By the time Necromancy came out, I was about halfway through that. But Necromancy came out, did all that, and then among the whole Hero Pass thing, I didn't hate it, but I wasn't happy with it on how they advertised it. And basically everybody jumped ship at that point, and I figured what better time for me to be like, this is kind of BS. Like if I'm going to try to quote unquote make a stand, like this is when I do it, not just when I get my, pants in a wad because I don't like something personally, but like when the entire community is behind it, it's like, all right, I'm kind of done with this. So I fully kind of stepped to old school for quite a while, and I finished out the optimal quest guide, and I actually completed Song of the Elves, which is the last quest on that list.
Oh,
like
interesting that they put that one last.
12 hours before Leagues 4 started. And that was my goal. Let me finish this. I was getting hyped for Leagues. I finished that, logged out, didn't even go to Perif yet, woke up the next morning and hit the ground running on Leagues 4, and I really haven't looked back. I mean, I've just really dipped into old school. And my kind of theory behind that is, obviously I'm past all the bitterness, I'm embracing it, but I'm also at a point like an RS3 where there's not much left for me to do. I'm not going to go for insane final boss. I'm not going to do the crazy stuff like that. I'm to where like my main goal is, so now I'm looking for something else to do. But I've always thought like it would be so cool, like having the knowledge and experience I have now, going back in a fresh account, like going back in time. Because it's like, if I started in 2004 with the knowledge I know now, like I could max an account in like a year or like a year and a half. It wouldn't take me 11 years, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I've been with it. I've always been like, oh, I wish I would have got like rune crafting first to have it untrimmed. So that is my kind of current goal right now. I'm 96 or 97 rune crafting.
I was wondering if you were going to do that.
Yeah, that's my first, going to be my first cape, and then I'm going to hopefully drop Trick and Telegrab it until I max, and hopefully have an untrimmed runecrafting cape by the time I max in old school. But that's a long-term goal. I'm not playing like absurd hours to get it done, but when I am on, that's what I'm doing. So I don't foresee myself maxing anytime soon, but that's kind of my overarching goal, just with kind of my play style. But that's kind of my background. Life gets in the way, and unfortunately that's just how it is. But yep, that's me. So
What strikes me is that we have two very similar paths here, starting obviously at different times and jumping off the train at very similar times for that too.
For different reasons, but
Yeah, for different reasons, of course. And, Dave, you mentioned you played Leagues 4 as your first one, Sirion.
Leagues 4 as well, actually.
So
Yeah.
Trailblazer Reloaded, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's pretty much the same then. So that's both Trailblazer Reloaded and Raging Echoes for you before we get to Catalyst here on RS3. And one of the things that we do on these Leagues episodes is go through what you guys chose for your relic choices here in Catalyst, and that's just a good baseline to kind of get things off the path. So, Dave, what was your tier 1?
My tier 1 was Excavator, believe it or not, right?
All right. Sirion?
So, yes.
I mean, people will remember that that archaeology is still my favorite skill. So obviously I went for animal. No, of course I went for excavator.
And see, I want to see how similar these are as we get through this. So tier 2?
Good question. What were they again?
They were farming, agility,
farming.
or thieving.
Yeah, I went with farming frenzy. So one of the things I like, so one of the approaches I was taking Leagues is I like leaning into these strategies that are very different than the ones in the main game, right?
Right.
Like, I like playing the normal game but fast, but to me it's way more fun if you get to do completely different things and strategies. And Farming Frenzy of the 3 ones in this tier felt like the one that let me do that most. And it ended up being the way, right? With the Voice of Seren strategy in Fifth Dinners to get gold Guthix butterflies, which I have used quite extensively.
Yeah, that's fair. I have a feeling that this one is very imbalanced in terms of what everybody took, but I think a lot more people should have given consideration to the agility one.
I think that's fair.
When you
I think
look at it.
hindsight, yeah, it's hindsight. I think different choices could be made. At the time, I think there was kind of a clear winner, but yeah, I could see how.
Yeah,
how the
and I
agility
mean it
would be a
depends.
good
It
pick.
depends what you're going for, and I think one of the things this league has said is that there's really no wrong choice, and I think the choice that encapsulates that the most is tier 3, the teleporting relic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What did you guys go for on those?
I went with Fairy's Flight.
I did too, and I thought I saw stats where that was actually not the most picked one.
No, the most picked one was Slayer.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, you can make the argument that you get the Spirit Tree Rerouter and the Portable Fairy Ring with Invention, but that's not until later. And that kind of, takes out 2/3 of it. But I think Fairy's Flight is a good choice and probably the one that I, would have picked both times around, I think.
Also, I mean, I feel like the teleport relic is a lot, just throwing it back to old school a little bit. It's a little bit more important in old school because, you can't forget that you have lodestone. A lodestone is going to get you 80% of where you need to go. And this is more just kind of like a flourish. Like, can it get you a little bit closer to maybe a specific strategy that you're going to do or focus on? Otherwise, you're going to get where you need to go pretty well, flawlessly. So, I mean, one could even say like in the next league, a teleport thing could either just put all these together and just be like a passive, like it kind of was with last recall in Leagues 4, where that was a relic choice, but they just decided to give it to everyone so they could have like better choices or something that's a little bit more influential. But that's kind of where I stand with it. So, and I was familiar with Fairy's Flight because that's what I chose in both of the old school leagues that I did. So I know there's more Slayer content in RS3 and more kind of niche places to get. But in terms of like tasks in my head, I was like, okay, that'll be fine if you're just gonna like rush Slayer or do Slayer. Otherwise, I can just teleport close to where I need to go. Very rarely are you going to teleport to a Slayer monster to like get to a skilling spot or a shop or something like
Right.
that. So
And when it comes to PVM, let us not forget War's Retreat.
exactly, yeah.
So
Yeah, that's really the thing, right? Like I like Fairy's Flight, and I don't regret that choice. But realistically, there's an overhead in thinking, oh right, what fairy ring is closed? What's the code again? What farming patch is closed? Half the time I find myself, even if it's not the most optimal thing to just take the lodestone, it's close enough. And that's unfortunate because that is sort of the interesting puzzle aspect of leagues, in my opinion, right? Like I have these unconventional tools. How do I use them in an interesting way? And lodestone sort of trivialized that.
yeah, and I basically told everybody in our giant theory crafting episode that this one you choose the one that just sounds most interesting to you because it's so easy to get around in RS3 that it's really not going to matter here. Whereas if we flip this on its head, if we would have had the Slayer skull teleport thing in the last old school league, I would have been a happier camper in terms of getting to places like the Dagonoth Kings as an example, because there's no War's Retreat there. So it is very easy to get around in RS3, and this tier probably, if I go out on a limb, they could probably maybe just axe this tier next time and add something more interesting in this tier 3 spot. I don't know. That might be a controversial opinion, but that's what people come here for. Tier 4, you guys all rejuvenated for Divine Woodcutter, right?
Absolutely.
What'd you really pick?
I went Clue. It seemed the most to make sense. Again, that's what I kind of fell back on familiar picks that I used in the previous old school leagues. But I know Shane and I briefly talked about
5,000 points
but,
in Clues.
Yeah.
And about 2,000 of them come from Masters and getting a die.
Right. Yeah.
Look, I went with Clue as well, and for me the idea was like if this was like a long-term league where eventually I was looking to max, I might have gone with Production Master and sort of skip the Clue points. But I went with Clues because for me Catalyst was really about dipping my toes into RS3, and Clues was like this is the relic that's going to give me the most points most quickly.
And that is a 100% valid choice. Clues is definitely the fastest path to tier 5 and tier 6.
Mm-hmm.
And tier 5 is our combat choice.
I went with melee.
I think that's a smart choice.
Yeah. I think that was
and largely, I mean, it was a little bit unfortunate because melee was the one I picked for the last old school leagues as well. So it would have been nice doing something different. I just couldn't be bothered. Like I won't go into it here, but I have beef with necromancy, and I just didn't want to deal with the armor grind because I still have to finish the armor grind on my main.
And let me tell you, you are 100% right. You do not want to do that armor grind with all the quests associated with it in leagues, in my opinion.
Exactly. I was like, you know what? I have Excavator. I'm gonna have the melee armor. I don't mind doing Grador for my gear and Barrows and what have you. So I went with Barbarism, and I've never regretted it, to be honest. The healing is, for someone who has been out of the game for such a long time, perfect.
Yeah, it's very strong. What'd you go with, Dave?
I did go with necromancy because I knew that I wouldn't. I'm familiar with it. It seems, I mean, when I played with it, it was pretty hands-off, overpowered, and I don't want to say done for you, but it's like, you just go through, everything's kind of spelled out. It's not free, but I was familiar with it. I just like the style. I am in the process of, I've kind of put the brakes on at, I think, 70, and I was doing other tasks, but I'll have to, grind out the rest. I know they did remove some of the quest requirements for Hermod and Raziel and stuff like that. So hopefully once I get to like tier 80 or whatever, once I get to tier 7, I'll just be able to kind of camp Raziel and get that tier 95 and just be kind of done with that, so to speak. So far it's been fine, but I haven't been too combat heavy. I mean, I'm only 69 Slayer, so I haven't even done 15 Slayer tasks yet, so I just haven't been doing much combat. Haven't made it to God Wars yet because, yay, it's locked behind quests. Go figure. But we'll get into that later.
Two small quests, and
yeah,
but the
I
bigger
know.
thing is stats, which comes down to flash events. But that's a topic for another show. Have you taken advantage of being able to say go out and full Mystic or something like that and do necromancy?
I actually haven't because I spent one of the early days I spent an entire day getting my level 60 necromancy gear, so that's just what I use. I haven't really theory craft and gotten too creative with relic synergies and if I have 100% necromancy, I can wear whatever the heck I want. I haven't got that too deep. I'm pretty well just in task survival mode, so to speak, just trying to clawed as many points as I can. But yeah, it could be interesting for me to try out. So,
and do we have any bankers, note takers here in the crowd?
No.
Nope. I initially had, and we were talking before the league dropped, Shane and I had mentioned that, and he's like, "Oh, you might want to reconsider," because I just kind of glanced at everything. I was like, again, I was familiar with Banker's Note, but at the same time, it's like anything you would need Banker's Note for, we kind of have an answer for that with a wood box or an ore box or whatever you need. Otherwise you're just going to be, either dropping the logs or burning the logs or fletching the logs immediately. And the perfection is basically a golden god, kind of in disguise. So I had to read the fine print a little bit more, and I was like, this makes a lot more sense. So being able to perk my gear with whatever I want, having golden god, in essence, I was like, yeah, this is the clear answer for sure. Having infinite money is way more important than being able to, cook all my sharks at once, at a remote fire. So yeah.
Look, I think Banker's Note has a lot of really cool things. So in Leagues 4, I took Banker's Note, and it solves runecraft, for example, right? Like
it would solve runecrafting here on RS3 as well.
Yeah, exactly. Like you sit at an altar, and it's literally like a node, click altar, a node, click altar. It's like the thing is what's going to come earlier, your RSI or 99 or 200 mil runecraft even. Like that's the kind of stuff you can do with Banker's Note. So I do like it in concept because it does like allow you to do things that are otherwise not possible. But perfection does that even more. So
yeah. I know that both of you aren't at tier 7 yet, but what are your tier 7 choices going to be if you get there?
I haven't made a decision yet. I'm going to be honest. Okay. I don't know if I'm going to get there, so I've not been stressing about it. My original idea was going with Everlasting Faith because, I don't really want to bother with special attacks and learning. I've never done PVM with special attacks in RSV. I've never gone that deeply into it. So I didn't really want to bother with learning it. And Everlasting Faith seemed like a thing where I can just park myself at a boss and be fine. That being said, now that I've seen how much healing I'm get from melee already, I don't really need Soul Split. The protection prayers are useful but meh. So maybe I would go Ascension, though I'm actually not. I don't understand PVM well enough to understand what it will get me. From my understanding, it's just a flat out DPS increase.
Yeah, Ascension would effectively get you at its base and always on 7% crit chance boost and a chance to roll any of the god books and elder god books, really.
And to be honest, the boost you can get to 255 for 6 seconds, that's something I had on Leagues 5 as well, where if you died, you would be revived with like all your stats to 255, and that would slowly. That one is a lot of fun when that happens. You can just smack a boss,
especially for defense.
Yeah, exactly. Combine that with like activate Berserker at the same time or something like that if you're melee, and just everything becomes a big chicken.
What are you thinking, Dave?
I was also kind of on the fence, and I kind of just told myself, it'd be 50-50 once I get there. as it stands now with my current progress, I feel like I'm leaning a lot heavier towards Everlasting Faith, just as more of a lean back method.
Hmm.
It not that I've been struggling with food. I honestly haven't tried that much. I've just been buying pre-made chocolate, whatever it is, at the Gnome thing because it's a quick, easy 1500 heal. I don't have to worry about fishing or cooking or whatever. I think that's going to be the route I go. And everybody's like, well, you don't need healing if you take Ascension because you're killing the boss faster. At the same time, just with my real life schedule and not having as much playtime, I don't want to be parked at a boss, lean forward, trying to tick perfect and rely on RNG and stuff. I would much rather have 30-second longer kills on Raziel if it means that I don't have to worry about, food or potions or what have you.
Yeah,
I think it works best for my not being I'm not a PVMer in the main game. Like that's just not, I get my one kill for trim and I'm done. So I very rarely farm bosses, so I don't have the strategies and the techs and all this stuff like that to where it's like, oh, let me spend 30 minutes watching a boss video on how to do this, where I could just I can probably just camp at a lot of bosses, obviously knowing a few of the mechanics and not have to worry about, doing the full fight. Arguably, that's kind of what a league is for. It's an overpowered mode, not just oh, here's a couple extra overloads type deal. So that's where I'm at with it. So.
Yeah, and I've heard great things about Everlasting Faith from people in terms of being, a lot of people have been, poo-pooing it and whatnot, specifically the people at the high end, but it definitely does tick that box of providing something, an experience that you can't get in the main game. And, the biggest thing that I think we walk away from here is that aside from combat choice, the relics are the same.
Right.
And it wouldn't be just you, the both of you, for whom this has happened. This has basically been the relic choice for everybody that we've had on the panel, minus a couple of odd choices here and there. I want to ask how this feels in relation to the balance that we saw in things like Raging Echoes and Trailblazer. But before that, just a big, huge thank you to all of the Patreon members who have made this episode possible. This week, that's Alvaro L, Amos Reed, Arvids L, Bladecom, Chilbura, Dominic R, Duramax, Gila Fleur, Imperialis, Jade Gizmo, Jason S, Jesse W, Julia W, Keski, Lemon Lodge, Luminos, Michelle M, Mike Wings, Mongrath, Parnassius, Ricky A, Robbie D, Rob Softs, Samuel FL, Scott DS, Shirt Pants, Sioaces, Smavin, Snail Mage, Tabby, The Naked Captain, The Dabbin Goat, Tim, Ukulele Steve, Woody, Zant, and Zazakon. A big, huge thank you to everybody out there. And if you want to learn more about all of our Patreon offerings, head on over to patreon.com/RSBNB. There, for as little as $1 a month, you can sign up and get access to an entire back catalog of monthly bits or bonus episodes, as we call them. We're also going to be unveiling a few new Patreon things next week, specifically around the $3 tier. Right now, that gets you the high-quality stereo version of the show, plus rank on Discord and a special chat channel, but we'll talk more about the add-ons to that next week. And of course, we also have the $5 tier where you get a shout out on the podcast each and every week, as well as access to the clips we use to make the clip show at the end of the year. So if any of this sounds interesting to you, head on over to patreon.com/RSBNB, sign up and support your favorite podcast. Thanks, everyone.
So I think Leagues 5 and Old School, Raging Echoes, had reasonably unbalanced choices. I think Leagues 4 was much more equally divided, but the numbers I've seen in Catalyst sort of blow it completely.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why we haven't seen the stats on the tail end relics in terms that they put out, because we really only saw the stats on the first three, and those were completely imbalanced to up the wazoo. So. And to your point about Trailblazer versus Raging Echoes, you take what we saw during Raging Echoes and you just add on, 15-20% to that, and that's what the percentages are looking like here. And with that, we scratch our heads and we say the relics that have been put in place here compared to the diversity of choices we've seen in the Old School leagues. How does that make you guys feel? having those choices that you made, like if we look at the choices made here in Catalyst versus the choices made in Raging Echoes or Trailblazer Reloaded, which ones were easier to make and which ones were more interesting?
I think, as I said before, it was interesting, and it was a lot of people were saying it was new bait with the Perfection and Banker's Note, because anybody that had played Leagues before knows that like Banker's Note is pretty well the way to go. The only really challenge that had was Fire Sale in the old school leagues, but Perfection on the surface, and again, this kind of just comes down to reading the fine print. But to me, just reading it, was like, oh, okay, you have like unlimited invention perks. That's cool. That's helpful. That saves a lot of money, and it'll make you more powerful in combat. But Banker's Note, That's basically like a production master. Like that's going to help me with my skilling because I usually in leagues I plan to max because you're going to get a significant amount of points for that. But further digging deeper, it's like, oh, this is my money solve, and I'm so glad that I picked that now because I was holding up half of my training until I got to that tier because it's like I don't have great money. I mean, you getting your monthly welfare checks of quest dice and your 250 stipend to go for your 3 days until you get to the next tier. That's fine, but it's like once you get that perfection, it's like okay, cool. I can now go get 99 prayer with Saren stones or whatever or cleansing crystals, and just you really just it opens up. And I say opens up, it opens up maybe 2 or 3 thousand points immediately. But still, once you have that money, there's a lot more things you can do. If you're buying food from a store, that opens that up, and you're less bottlenecked, so to speak. So yeah, I think that was probably the most interesting choice. All the other ones, even just on the surface, seemed pretty obvious. Obviously, the last one is interesting too. So that probably had the most diversity in terms of playstyle, in my opinion, for Tier 7.
Yeah, that's fair. My question is the sameness we're seeing a result of the league's design or the main RS3 game?
What was that? I'm sorry.
Is the sameness in the relics we're seeing due to the way the league was designed or the game where the game is
I
at?
think probably the way leagues are designed, because obviously, as we can see through a lot of these are copies but slightly modified for RS3. I think going forward, if we don't have a section of the show where it's like, feedback or what you could improve, I think just stripping everything down and either redoing a lot of these to really focus on aspects of RS3, because like we were saying with the teleport relics, like those are great, those are really powerful and old school, but when you have the lodestone network, that's going to get you to 80 to 90% of the places you need to go already, and the teleport tier is more of just like personal preference. It's not as much utility. So whether or not they take that teleport tier out and make it just a bulk teleport item everybody just gets with a tier, is one thing. But I think a lot of this is just kind of copy and pasted from old school, which is fine. Like I'm beyond ecstatic that they've moved the league format to RS3. Like, as once I played old school leagues 4, I was like, oh, this would be so cool in leagues or in RS3, but it's like, oh, there's no plans to do that because microtransactions and all this stuff. But with the shift in microtransactions, I think they're giving this a chance. So I love this, and I don't want to discourage them from doing this, but I think everyone can agree there's a lot of work to be done. I'm glad they did this. I don't want to call it a prototype, but I think it's a step in the right direction. But I think the relics need to be tailored more to the style and kind of the ecosystem of RS3 rather than just copying over Banker's Note or Fairy's Flight or stuff like that.
Yeah, okay. What do you think, Sirion, in terms of between league design and the impact that the game had on everybody choosing the same?
Yeah, I think in a sense, the solves that like RS3 has developed in a very di interesting and different way, where I think more skills have obvious solves. And what I mean with solves is just like ways of training it that are reasonably fast. So uh, the interesting thing I've always had with the last two leagues, like the old school leagues, is that you couldn't just cheat and look at what the next person over was doing because they probably had different regions or a different plan, right? Like there were a lot of different paths and they were all equally valid. RS3 feels a little bit more set up like everybody should kind of just follow the same path because there is a very obvious singular meta. And to me, it is sad that a lot of the questions of what to actually do are already solved. That made the choices very obvious, but also very like not very interesting in my opinion.
Right. And, if we're replaying this from the group Ironman that started a year ago, a lot of the things that are happening in this league are the same methods that happened on that group Ironman, minus the things around, perfection and what have you.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Which, when you highlight that, there's that sameness there. And, one of the things I think that stood out to me immediately as a RS3 PVM person is that, we really have no use for the Animal Wrangler relic because Hunter is largely solved with Het's Oasis and later on Big Game Hunter if you want, so that it doesn't matter too much on that side. But when it comes to fishing your food, we have, of course, the green blubber jellyfish that is a no-tick food item, but the secondary food that a lot of people just use is the Saradomin brew. And with that, there's really not too much reliance on fishing for food in RS3. So that was a huge point off of Animal Wrangler, whereas, I remember in Raging Echoes and Trailblazer, those were some of the arguments you could make for maybe taking that version of Animal Wrangler.
Mm-hmm.
So, and, I think we also just have to, as Dave said, realize that this is the first league almost as if it was a prototype to show that it works. And as a result of that, this is, this is the way it's been described to me, get the engine work down and done so that, you have the underpinnings for a task system and relic system. And then after this, when you look at the next league, you focus on adding more tasks, you focus on refining relic choices, and then you maybe look at doing something like region locking or various different paths of progression with that. So.
Yeah, I know I had spoke a little bit on it, but I mean, I don't dislike region locking. I really like the open nature of Catalyst, and like you can go anywhere. You don't have to like weigh the options of, taking Elflands versus Asgarnia type thing. That's great, but I still feel like having all that, even with grouped regions and grouped tasks, it still just feels like you're thrown into a field and it's just like, what do I do now? So like without region locking, and I'm just kind of brainstorming here, but you could even do something to where rather than a overall points threshold for unlocking relic tiers, like maybe you could have, all regions are unlocked, but like once you complete 2,000 out of 5,000 points in the Relica region, you'll get a tier. So you can choose which ones you want to do first and plan that way without being locked to a region.
Yeah, there's so many different ways to do progression region locking without, copying the old school one. And we were talking about this a couple weeks back on the show, is that you don't necessarily need to go the full old school path. You could come up with your own thing and have it be, equally as interesting.
You need something, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the most important part. Like I've been playing RS3 leagues, but I really, the task list, the massive task list that we had, it felt so incredibly imposing at times. There's so many things.
And how do you find the task when you have the entire world open for you, right?
Exactly. Like the thing I really liked about region locking is that you do not unlock all of the tasks at the same time. So it's very much, it's more palatable, and like unlocking a new region, there's like a big sort of new set of tasks you do. Plus, what I also really like is because the region locking is locked behind number of tasks, not total points total, right? Yeah. You all of a sudden get this different dynamic where sometimes doing a few small tasks is worth it over doing one bigger task. Yep. Which in RS3 is not worth it. So the strategy in RS3 feels in Catalyst just feels too linear.
Yeah, and that's a very good point because I didn't forget that, but I kind of forgot that concept because yeah, it was an absolute value task number, not a points value, because I feel, and I was trying to figure out what was feeling like I was sprinting through wet concrete, and I think that's probably it because I'm at the point where like, I'm 2,400 points away from tier 7. I feel like I'm just trying to scrape at like 200 tasks. Which ones can I do? Because I feel like doing 74, 10 or 30 point tasks, like that's just such a slog where it's like I could just do one thing and get those points. So that's absolutely correct. That's a very good point.
Yeah, that was me about a week and a half ago because I was at around that same, point marker, 3,000, 4,000 to tier 7. And I'm like, how do I do this quickly? And then I realized, I can get around 4,700 points, give or take, if I get 100 mining and smithing and 99 fletching. Which, these are big tasks, so you're not getting, the task numbers complete, but by the end of it, that's just tier 7 rolling in very quickly. So you are abandoning that for you're abandoning the smaller tasks for the bigger tasks. I don't know if you guys are both using Wikisync, but if you are, how many easy tasks do you guys have left if you have your Wikisync available right now? Just out of curiosity.
23.
Okay.
Get mine pulled up here. Those are just the 10-point tasks.
Yes. I have 19. And for interest's sake, on the other hand, I have done 42 elite and 5 master tasks.
22 elite and 3 master.
I have 24 left.
Okay, so we're all about remarkably the same here as we get closer and closer to tier 7 on that. And
yeah,
another interesting thing that I did number-wise, recall that in Trailblazer Reloaded, it was 300 tasks to get your 3rd region, and in Raging Echoes, it was 400 tasks. That same marker, when I was at about 410 tasks, I had just closed tier 6.
That's about right. I have 447 tasks completed right now, so.
Yeah, I have 469.
And a lot of the tasks I think that we saw in RS3 here, just, based on our conversations with other old school players, is that they're all just very generic. Do you guys feel the same way as well? In that there's not as much specialization in some cases?
Yeah, it's also missing some of the funny and meme ones, I feel. Like in old school, there's like this classical task which is like chop a tree in the middle of a potato field. Things like that.
Use the northern staircase in Lumbridge.
Exactly. The one task that is physically impossible to complete, right? Yeah. So it in a sense, it does feel a little bit bland, and I think a lot of that also aligns with the fact that it feels like they just looked at like what achievements are interesting and turned those into leagues tasks, because the majority of these tasks are just achievements that already exist.
That is also a good point, and kind of goes back to, the engine needs to be catered to the RS3 ecosystem, because, in old school they don't have like rune score, right? I mean, they have collection log and they have like combat achievements, but those are very niche. It's not like Xbox where you're just like, oh, chop your first tree, do this. So yeah, I absolutely think that's a fair point. And again, I fully understand that was probably their quickest way to get this rolled out when the hype was up with the MTX and everybody was like engaged. That's great, but I think they're going to do well with the next one in terms of actually spending some time and getting it developed out properly, for sure.
Yeah. I'm not much of an old school PVM person, but based on what the both of you remember from the OS leagues that you've played, how high do the task index into high level PVM there?
It's very region dependent. If you chose Asgarnia, you were going to sit at God Wars Dungeon for many hours. I, I don't know. I feel like I'm getting to the point in RS3 where I need to start doing PVM to make good progress. So
Because one of the things that, has been said is that aside from things like equipping the Zuck Sword or the Fractured Staff, there's really not much in ultra high level PVM tasks compared to, the mid-level things like Barrows, the Dagonoth Kings, the Rex Matriarchs, God Wars Dungeon, and whatnot this time around, which I assume is something you guys probably would not be too interested in terms of having higher level PVM tasks, but I mean, maybe if our characters were more powerful, that would be something that could be leaned into. Or that.
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely enjoyed learning raids in Raging Echo, so I think it is a good way to push people to try out those experiences. That being said, everybody in RS3 is maxed. Everybody has had to do the raids and the bosses and what have you to get their comp cape. So who are we really encouraging to try and like, I feel we already have a free death weeks and other mechanisms to get people to try out PVM. So
yeah. And when you specifically ask that question with respect to Catalyst, I think you're asking the people who have come over from old school to try that PVM. I think that's the honest answer here.
Mm-hmm.
With that. So I know, Sirion, you put in a very colorful note for the for the stuff you wanted to talk about in this section about just bringing all these tasks back to RS3 in general. Have we hit on that, or do you want to expand on that?
This is one thing I found is so of course Leagues is very tasks heavy, right? And you can sort of get task exhaustion, I suppose. But I find that in Leagues that's never really been a problem in old school Leagues rather. But now in Catalyst, I just find myself sort of, I don't know. There's a certain tiredness I have around the fact that everything is a task.
Yeah, no, I think that's very fair. And again, something that I didn't realize that you pointed out was the number of tasks versus total points. And I think that has given me intense task fatigue. I was telling Shane either today or yesterday that I found myself, third or fourth day of Catalyst, I was like combing through Wikisync and like making my task list of like, where can I pull these points from? Where in Leagues 4 and Leagues 5, I was doing that like week 5 or week 6 between like Rune and Dragon Trophy. Like I was clawing my way to the end to Dragon, and I found myself doing that in Catalyst like week 1. Like I hadn't even reached like Iron yet. I'm like, oh my gosh, what's going on?
So that was before you got to tier 5 then, basically.
Yeah. So I feel like everything past like the teleport tier, I've had that sort of interaction. I've been like just scrounging and trying to really like, oh man, I need these points rather than like, and looking at, completion percentage, like, yeah, there's a bunch of like 10-point tasks, but it's like I can spend a day doing 50 10-point tasks. That's like 500 point, like that gets me nowhere as to where that would have gotten me a region in an old school thing. So it's just design philosophy, but I think that is the biggest player behind the task fatigue that I have felt so far. And, I want so bad to get Dragon Trophy and Catalyst. I just don't know if it's possible. I mean, we're halfway through, and I don't even have 20,000 points. Like, I'm just right on the cusp of 20,000 points. Now, granted, I'm hoping the power ramp goes up, and once I get my, in-game combat stuff, I can really just blaze through a lot. I just don't foresee it happening, which is very unfortunate. But yeah, that task fatigue is just, it really just takes the winds out of the sails for sure. So.
Yeah, and, when it comes to, in general, just talking about completion that people have done. One of the things that I highlighted to you, Sirion, a while back, and we were wondering if this was going to change, is that if we look at Raging Echoes, by the end of it, 64% of people had got a fire cape. And here we are in week 5 of Catalyst, and that number is 33% in Catalyst on RS3. What do we read into that?
I mean, I think the fire cape is not as iconic and necessary as it is in RS3 and it is in old school.
Not as necessary as in RS3.
Yes.
Okay, but I mean, if you want to do PVM, you need that to get into the kiln, and then you need that to get to the Zuck Cape, which is very transformative for endgame PVM. And that's maybe the lens that I'm looking at this through.
I mean, the alternative is that there's just way more people that tried out leagues and stopped. So that's the other explanation, right? Like, we don't know what that percentage is among all people who have played leagues to an extent where WikiSync picked up their stats.
Yeah. And that was just really eye-opening for me on that when we talk about tasks and just the amount of tasks that are there, and how something that was initially just a bunch of achievements strung together that led to comp and then eventually trim, we're now seeing a bunch of those come back to the league's task list. I think that's a very interesting thing, because that is, as much as people might not like it, that is the DNA of RS3. You max.
It is. Then
you go for something else beyond that.
I was playing it. I was going through the tasks. I'm like, oh, I remember why I'm no longer playing RS3, right? I have no desire to come back to RS3 after leaks, because I'm like, great, more tasks for me to do. It's more of the same. It feels so much more like the game wants to tell me what to do by giving me like an achievement and giving me a task for everything that I can achieve, which, look, I like my rewards. I like my achievements. I like my dings, right?
This was one of your first major letdowns on the podcast when you were hosting in 2016. You had the unfortunate time period of being on for the achievement rework and Shattered Worlds, both of which were letdowns at the time.
Massive letdowns, yeah. Exactly. So, and now I'm being confronted with exactly the same problems again. I'm like, to me, Leagues has been an eye-opener in a sense that it is really not my game anymore, I think. Like, it doesn't align with how I want to play games, because there's tasks everywhere. And every time I go, I feel I need to go that extra little bit.
You're being compelled by the game to do things you might not necessarily want to do.
Yeah.
Because everything else is so fast in the game. And this is...
And it is not that old school is entirely free of this.
No,
it has
of course
combat
not.
achievements.
Yeah.
It has achievement diaries, but at least those are very specific things, right?
They're modifiers.
It's either you go for your collection log, you go for combat achievements, or you go for diaries, or you go for quests, right? That's the 4 things you can really go for in the game, or 99s. Or you do some crazy thing where you get the fire cape without ever taking a single point of damage. And people who are not familiar with old school RuneScape might be like, that's a very specific example, Syrian. What do you mean? A content creator came up with that idea and did it. It feels, by not telling the player what to do, you immediately give the player more freedom to set their own goals.
And I think,
because in the absence of a goal, people will make their own. That's always been what RuneScape is about.
Yes.
And Capes of Accomplishments, when those came out, I said, this is the beginning of the end.
Well, we didn't know each other back then, but when Capes of Accomplishment came out, I saw people just going for 99s for the hell of it, cooking or fletching to get a cape because of the stat booster, because of how it looked.
Yes.
Yeah.
Rather than needing to. And the point that you brought up with that was exposed by this is that everybody says, let's just have a reform on microtransactions and the game will be better. No, there are
No.
many other surface level things, or many other things beyond the surface level that need to be dealt with, in terms of things like daily challenges, flash events, the repetitive nature of some of the pieces of content out there, and then you get down to even, further levels down below it. You could even throw in the game's inherent push for funneling everybody towards things like Max, 120s, Comp, Master Quest, and everything on that list that you were mentioning.
Mm-hmm.
These are all things that can be addressed. I think that, there needs to be a good wholesale conversation had with the player base, but I don't necessarily know if the RS3 player base sees these things as issues beyond microtransactions. That's what I'm wondering.
I think that what you said there is really important. Microtransactions, I've never loved them. I hate that they're being pushed in the game, but people who know me from the show knew that at some point I just ignored Treasure Hunter purposely, right? Because I wanted my achievements to be owned. I had my beef with microtransactions. I wish I could have been an Iron Man with access to the GE. I would have jumped on that immediately. At the same time, I don't think that just getting rid of microtransaction does it for me in the game. And I don't think I've ever misled people. I've always been very open and transparent about telling people that. So leagues, I was hoping that because it's a different context and because it's different, it wouldn't have the same effects. But the same sense of fatigue that came into me by playing the main game exists for leagues, unfortunately.
Yeah. Does that exist for you at all, Dave? Because you have done more of that comp and trim grind. How do you feel about that?
What's the question more specifically?
Well, like in terms of if you compare OS and RS3, OS doesn't funnel people towards things like comp and trim and
sure
things beyond that, but you have done those on RS3. How did this league make you feel in relation to that and tasks?
In all honesty, I mean, I didn't really put those two together, but on that same side of the coin, I would have to say that's kind of how I am driven with games. Like if I like a game, I will play it, but having that roadmap, like obviously, I want that, completions cape. I want that trim cape. I obviously want that master trim cape. So it's like these tasks are what I have to do. Now, granted, if I'm like on and playing, like sure, it may not be what I want to do, but like I want that end result. I want to be able to show this off. So like I'm going to do it. That's just my philosophy.
So back
of playing.
In the day, you'd be one to like 100% games on the Xbox and whatnot.
Yes, and that was absolutely. And I'm proud, because all the Mass Effect games was like, oh, I got 100%, gamer score and stuff, and that, it took me like a 3-month break, for example, on Mass Effect 2, beating it on Insanity because I got to a part where I just could not beat. I just put it down. Like I stopped playing the game, but like I wanted that achievement. I wanted to be able to tell people, hey, I beat this game fully. Like that was cool. I liked the completion part of that. So that's what I did. I just moved on to other games. But again, that's how I like to play games. But in terms of leagues, I wasn't necessarily, I just know that that's part of that game mode. Obviously, it's not for everyone, but I never really drew. It's like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm, maxing or trimming again. But I knew that that's what this game mode was. Now, granted, they could absolutely like go a different route, and I would be perfectly fine with it. But initially, I was not like, oh my gosh, here we go again. So
yeah, and I think that's one of the things that has been exposed throughout Catalyst is just how much of these other issues with the core of RS3 have come up with that. And one thing that we did want to touch on, and the community, this we heard tons with through the community, was on quests and their need for progression. And I initially chalked this up to people looking at things like Raging Echoes and Trailblazer Reloaded, seeing all the auto-completed quests and saying, hey, we want that, but we don't have the region locking to bring those along with it. And fun fact, in the post leagues Q&A they did, it was a very late addition to even having the Elf quest line completed and access to Prif on day one for this league.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So How did you guys feel about questing in this league? It's like I mentioned, I've been doing the least of it.
Oh boy. Dave, you want to go first?
I say yeah. I'll kick this one off because I'll be a little ruthless. I don't want to say quests have ruined this league for me, but they have been the biggest contributor to why I've just been not having the greatest time. That's nothing against quests. I think quests absolutely have their place. But this is a league. This is supposed to be like, you know, mandated private server level power. I'm not speedrunning quests. And that goes further. I want to, dip in the two ecosystems. There's no click blue. So you have to like, you have the wiki pulled up and you're, checklist and going through and, doing everything manually.
What is click blue?
Quest
Helper.
helper.
Oh, okay. I thought that was the Democratic donor program in the US.
Oh my God.
No. And now in the context of Gridmaster, right? I did a few quests and it is, oh my God, it's night and day. Having quest helper there, I can just turn off my brain and click through Waterfall quest and fight arena and not worry about it. And yeah, I see what you mean.
I think there is a distinct difference, and I'm very happy. I'm not bashing them at all. Again, this is the first one. I think it was very good that within the first week they removed like a lot of quest requirements from content. That's great, but at the same time, I still don't think that's the answer. And just for context, and I was telling Shane this. I was doing the divination grind. I know a lot of people were doing caches, but I have a lot of kind of downtime to where I can't necessarily be fully focused, but I'll have like my tablet and I'll be on mobile, so I'll just like AFK stuff. So I was doing a lot of divination, got 99, but I had to skip luminous wisps and I was doing the engrams and couldn't access that until I did the quest line to get to soften him. Now, granted, I know that you only have to start Icthrin's little helper and, contact or whatever, what have you, but I still feel like that's silly and unnecessary to have to go through that, even if it's 30 minutes.
Right, because if you would have chosen desert in any of the OS leagues, you would have just had that.
It's just open. Like, you can get there. Like, this is a leagues, and I'll get into this a little bit later. I have put stuff in the show notes, but it's leagues. I don't want to have to do quests unless the rewards you're going to give me are like astronomical. Unless you're going to give me like a million XP lamp after doing
like
quests,
the World Wakes or
right.
Extinction.
There's no point for me to do a 30-minute quest to get 400 energy to be able to turn that in to get a 80-point task. Like that, to me, that's ridiculous. That's not overpowered. That's now in that case, that feels like, oh, it's just another thing to check off for completionist. I'm not getting anything, but like at the end of the day, hopefully I get to Dragon. There's no guarantee, but here we are. So that feels ridiculous. I think Extinction, removing Dream of Aya requirement from that was great. I think keeping Extinction in the game and still giving the lamps for that, that's great. And there's like 1,200 or 1,500 points in doing that whole quest line. Like, that's fine. I can set aside 2 days, get that done. It's a good chunk of points. But having to do quest and Shiloh Village, like, why wasn't that autocomplete? I still can't use Hagidi's cart. I have to go to the fairy ring and run around to get in there and to get my Slayer task from Duradel. To me, that's ridiculous. And that just, it doesn't feel like leagues. That just feels like a community weekend event or something. You know what I mean? It's just like, oh, there's a little bit boosted XP rates, but it's just those little things for something that is just not significant. You should not have to do the quest. And that doesn't mean, okay, well, you can still access it without doing the quest. Just autocomplete the quest. Just move on. I mean, again, they can't do anything after the leagues is done because people have it in their routes, or if they were counting on that to do that. But like for next league, just depending, whatever your
is the answer just to
autocomplete.
Is the answer just to call the next RS League Trailblazer?
I don't know, but it's just the whole. Again, I mean, I don't even want to say leave in, Monkey Madness and Desert Treasure, because that's just a slog. I mean, have something to where you unlock that, make that the carrot that you're working towards, with a task. If you complete this task, you unlock that. Oh, cool, that is a reward. I don't want to have to go.
That's what I ended up doing in Gridmaster, right? Where certain
it
tasks unlock
so
quest
good.
series.
Yes. And it's
maybe
not even like related. I mean, granted, this is the Gridmaster is like a super accelerated mode, but it's like even going back, and again, I'm just kind of brainstorming with what I was saying earlier, is like, you have region themed tasks, and like once you complete half of those regions tasks, then like, okay, if it's Mortania, once you complete 2,000 out of 5,000 points there, you unlock all the big quests there. It's like, okay, cool. Now it's opened up. Now I can finish that. Or you get a tier. So it's like you shouldn't have to do that major content to get that content unlocked because again, at that point, it doesn't feel like a league. It just feels like speedrunning at that point, and you're not getting much.
That's
If
actually a very apt point, and I hadn't thought of that
I think
before.
if I were to summarize it
Yeah.
and agree with it, is that I feel that of all of the leagues I've played, all the temporary game modes I've played, Catalyst is the most heavy on chores.
yeah. And there's no that would also give you the motivation to sweep up the little piddly tasks of 10 points or whatever because it's like if I can just get these tasks done like I'm gonna unlock all the barrow stuff or the swamp is a bad example but like for desert for example say you get all that you get to pyramid plunder and like once you loot room 7 of pyramid plunder you unlock desert treasure. It's like okay cool that's great because it's like I can't even get my bandit camp lodestone because I haven't done desert treasure and it's like I'm almost to tier 7 like what is that like that's just so like a slap in the face to me for a league game mode at least so that's kind of where I'm at. That's the gist of it. I could talk in circles,
Yeah,
but
no,
that's where I stand.
I think a lot of people probably agree with you, and not many people have, thought about it beyond, oh, this is annoying. Sirion, do you have anything to add to it? Because I heard a big sigh when we started this segment.
Yeah, I'm spoiled, I think. I've done some quests, right? I've done some of the must-haves. I've done, the classics that give a bunch of XP that every Leagues player at this point knows, right? Waterfall quest, fight arena. Um, it it feels jarring to me. Like they are not great in old school, but you have quest help and you can sort of get through it. It surprised me that they felt as bad, if not worse, because of a variety of reasons in RS3. And because everybody in the main game, not everybody, but like the majority of people for which the updates are catered are end game, you get a lot of this sort of all of the new content seems to be locked behind some kind of um like high level or like a quest or like a quest series. In a normal game, that's not a problem, right? Like you can put things behind any quest because let's be honest, the majority of people that are playing have quest cape already. But then you get to leagues and all of a sudden you don't have access to all of that, which granted, that's kind of the joy of not of having a new account, but then you have to go and do chores. And then you go and do those chores and you're like, this is this is terrible content, right? Like in comparison to some of the new stuff, it hasn't received any quality of life.
Mhm.
And that is something I think old school has done much better, is it has gone to a lot of the old content and over time sort of uplifted it to a higher minimal bar. That's not to say that rat catches is a great quest now in old school. Like that's still absolute horseshit, but I feel in general it just does a much better job at making the content feel like it is not 20 years old.
Yeah, I think that's a fair summary. And again, it's like, how many people playing this have played a second account, right? And
Exactly, and it just feels like, I mean, some skills are reasonably well fitted, but like divination still feels unfinished. I'm sorry, like
well,
there's
yeah,
no
I mean, when the
point.
best way of training it is the engrams and the caches.
Exactly, and there's nothing you get on the way. I don't know. Like I
It
can't
speaks to a
quite.
bigger issue of mid-game progression that the quests have highlighted, I think.
Yeah, to me,
that is tied to the league's progression rate.
There is a bunch of content that they added at the start of the game, right? Like early game is actually you have like the fort, you have the beautiful beginner area, which is Burthorpe and Taverley. That's all really well thought out. It's really beautiful, and then you get dumped into this world of pixels and shit stuff and jank quest lines before you get to the end game where things are reasonably polished again.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was always wondering what you meant by that, but because I agree that starting experience from the tutorial to Burthorpe Lumbridge is actually pretty good at this point.
Yeah, it is.
But that what comes after that, I think I have the benefit of knowing that content like the back of my hand from the show. That we talked about this. That I didn't see exactly what you meant there, but I think when you put it from that angle, it's clear. Interestingly enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I honestly think this ties into the wet concrete feeling you were having there, Dave, with the progression rate in the league.
Yeah.
In terms of that, and a lot of people have commented on that to the point that, remember, in the first 3 days they basically re-tiered the first 4 relics.
Yeah.
And actually the first 5 relics brought them all down to a different point. Okay, we'll take that, but I don't necessarily know if that affects the mid game progression in the league. And again, I feel like we're just taking so many learnings from this, and I hope that there is a list inside the company of things that have come up on the dev side and things that the players have said that have exposed themselves as issues throughout this league.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
So, anything else there on quests and progression?
I don't think so. I think we pretty well hit it.
Okay. Nope. Well, what's missing? What's missing for you guys after playing Catalyst and Trailblazer Reloaded, Raging Echoes, Gridmaster?
Yeah, I will say, and I added it to the notes there. I think generally with playing for, obviously, let's call it 4 weeks now, and not being at tier 7 yet. Granted, there was, just me lack of playing, but I think there's still just a lack of overpoweredness. It doesn't feel like a league, and I think we've kind of alluded to that and spoke on that throughout the show. But that being said, again, it's supposed to be like a private server, like, holy cow, like, we're just blazing through this, right? Some of the XP rates, I mean, I know we're at like 12x, 16x, still don't feel like that. I mean, for an example, I have a lot of downtime sometimes at my work, and I'll be on mobile, and I will say I've probably been at use for, let me say, 8 total hours. Let's call it for the past week, 8 to 10 total hours at use, and I went from 70 to 86. That feels insanely slow. Like, I feel like I could just be doing that in the main game. Nothing about that feels fast. Whether, obviously, I don't have the woodcutting axe, like, that's a choice I made, but still, it's with RS3's feel of how fast skills have become and how like 120s are the new 99. I don't feel like a league going from 1 to 99 should feel like a 1 to 99. Like, it should feel very, very fast. Now, granted, there are some other skills like prayer. If you took perfection, you do cleansing stones, you can have it in like 37 minutes. Like, yes, that's super overpowered, but other skills, and I think that just plays into the math and the balancing for the next league. I don't feel overpowered in this league. And again, I haven't really dipped my toes into in-game combat and stuff like that, but there should still be something said for your average player. I would consider myself an average player. I'm not no-lifing, but I'm not playing like an hour a day.
Yeah.
That we're still not at tier 7, or we're just got to tier 7 and we're halfway through. It just is, for RS3, it just does not feel overpowered.
Yeah, I'm going to put my min-maxer hat on, and I'm going to tell you what the problem is there. And this, and I'm going to preface this by saying this does come down to probably a problem within the woodcutting skill in terms of how it's designed. But putting my min-maxing hat on, you're doing woodcutting wrong. After the tree rebalance, the best tree to cut after unlock towards 99 is mahogany until you hit the overgrown idols in the 80s.
Okay, that's fair. And again, that's just my ignorance, and I think
that's counterintuitive because you'd think the best thing you can cut should be the best XP.
Right, and that goes back, and that was something I was going to touch on earlier with kind of my history and just me approaching RS3 leagues. Is I was even speaking to you about Tier 1 Relic and how I was unsure, and you had said, oh, well, hunting is solved by Het's Oasis. I've never done Het's Oasis other than a task when I was in maintenance mode. Like, I don't know the progression in RS3 other than being a maxed player, which I know I'm in the minority because a lot of people have second accounts or they're doing an Iron Man or they have stuff like that. But like a lot of this like mid to low level content is just, I feel like, very unfamiliar to a decent amount of people, to where it's like, in my head, I'm thinking, okay, Hunter, you start out with like, Kebits, and then you move on to chins, and then you can barehand butterflies, and like, that's where my head was. But there's so much other stuff. I obviously didn't think about that. I mean, the overgrown idols, I did that for my task. I retrimmed, and like, I've never touched those ever again. So a lot of this stuff is probably I'm getting in my own way. But at the end of the day, I still feel like some of these relics could pass as like invention perks or tools or stuff like that. I mean, we already have the like the farming frenzy type stuff. I mean, you have that with the crux or whatever that stuff is with the instant grow potions, or maybe that's player owned farms.
And
like,
that's why when I re-rolled to do Melee the second time around, I didn't take the farming one because I knew with advanced time I could basically get, half of the farming relic with my growth potions. Anyway, sorry.
Right.
Continue.
So no, you're fine. But I mean, just kind of picking this apart and thinking as we're talking about this is, some of these relics could pass in RS3 as being content, maybe not to the extreme that they're at. And I don't want to contradict myself in saying that they're overpowered, but I mean, these teleport items, I mean, we have
they
stuff
could pass
with
as
invention.
Treasure hunter rewards.
Well, oh God, yeah. But I mean, like the void passage, like we can make that. Like we can do that in the main game. So like having that, the only benefit to have that as a relic is like you don't have to go through that entire like crafting arc to get it. Farming frenzy, we had that with the instant grow potions. Let's see, going down the line. I mean, even tier 1, I mean, I feel like Skillvention kind of does some of that stuff. Again, not to the extent we have, the wise perks and we have furnace and stuff like that. But again, that's like stuff we have. This is just a little bit more. Nothing feels like, oh my gosh, we're in a league. Like, this feels awesome. Like, let me keep playing, So, I mean, even with tier 5, with what you choose, I mean, with how many different perks we have. I mean, again, we're not going to get to 100% accuracy necessarily and stuff like that, or unlimited.
Oh, we're there. We're there.
Materials. But even like with Ascension, I mean, we have the God books, but how long until we get stuff to where we can proc more than one, or where you start combining them? I mean, it's like all of this stuff feels like these could be in RS3 within like 2 to 5 years as like actual content with a power creep.
Yeah.
Nothing just stands out to me. So that's where I stand with it. It just doesn't feel like a league. It feels like just kind of a task thing. And in all honesty, when they announced Leagues for RS3, obviously I'm very excited, but as it got closer, I'm like, oh, we're not going to have wiki sync because that was a RuneLite thing. Like, this is going to be like
I
crazy.
am pleased that they were able to pull that out.
Truth be told, like, I don't think I would be playing this league to the extent I am, or even taking it like seriously, if I didn't have WikiSync. If they did not incorporate that in, I mean, with how we're using WikiSync and we still feel like we're sprinting through concrete, I can't imagine what it would be like if we did not have that. So I'm very grateful for that. I know I've, bleep it out, but for bitching so much, I think they're on the right track. I love the devs. They're doing a great job. I love that they're expanding into RS3. None of this is like, what the heck are you doing?
No,
but like,
and we expect this as the first league, if I'm being honest.
I do think it is worth mentioning though. Like, I think it's a common complaint that people don't feel powerful, and I think it's a little bit overblown. If you look at if you look at the actual powers and you do the math on like the combat relics, for example, it's pretty crazy. It
Yeah.
just doesn't feel as powerful because the contrast isn't there, right?
Right.
In old school, like really the main thing you get is your attack rate is split in half, which
Right.
is like
Which is very difficult to do
a
here.
blowpipe in old school turns into a machine gun because you
Yeah.
attack basically.
And-
Like that's fun. Even if it's not powerful, it feels powerful. It fits in that power fantasy. The thing is, in RS3, we have so long ago already moved away from embracing the grind and embracing the slowness of the game, right? Everything has to be fast. We are getting faster combat, like training methods for basically every skill. So yeah, we can make that faster, even faster, but
Mhm.
that feels already solved. It's not like we are. I think that's where the difference lies, and I think that's why this leagues feels less like a leagues to me. It doesn't feel like we're doing anything different because the game has already power crept so much. And
Right.
I think if they wanted to make the leagues a little bit more successful, maybe they need to lean in and be like, okay, how can we make this actually crazy? Because in a sense, it feels a little bit like they tried to make things balanced and like give up, right? Leagues is not balanced.
No.
Right.
And I just want to run through some numbers here right now, just quickly at the top, just to give a bit of context to what you're about to say. So, in general, adrenaline equals damage, and adrenaline you get from your basic attacks is doubled. Okay, good. You chose Necromancy, Dave. So what this gets you is this gets you 25% more healing from your ghost and 25% more damage from all your conjures. This is very beneficial to you until you hit around tier 70, tier 80. It basically acts as a 25% increase on your damage per minute. Sirion, you chose melee. This basically makes your Dragon Halberd around tier 89, tier 90 damage with 100% accuracy when you do that,
So,
plus all the healing that you have.
I think the most fun I had in leagues is with my Dragon Halberd, go to Hellhounds, go to the Visor's Cavern to farm the clue scrolls there, right? The heart clues. I literally laughed out loud while doing that Slayer task because I was killing them so fast, ridiculously fast. I didn't need prayer because I was just healing up, right, from all of the damage I did. I had so much fun, and then the extra range, like the extra tower range, meant that I basically covered, like with Hurricane and things like that. I just covered half the cave. That was fun. That felt fun. The thing is, a lot of these, like looking at Specialists, for example, I feel Specialist is incredibly powerful in the right hands.
It is. I can tell you
and
that.
I think a lot of these things, if you know how the combat system works with like adrenaline, then you understand how powerful it is, but you look at your character and it doesn't look any different than you play it in a normal game. It's a numbers game. It doesn't feel transformative.
Yeah.
It is very much.
Just to give you a Specialist example, it's what I took. And for melee, I went to the Calphite Queen, which, entry-level boss, you need 2 combat styles. For the second phase, that is melee protected. What I did with that is I used Specialist because it gives you a free special attack every 15 seconds or something to that attune, is I used the Saradomin Sword special, 2 of those, and that finished the second phase of the Calphite Queen.
Yeah, there you go. I think
so that goes to what you're
boils...
saying is that if you know the combat system, it can be very powerful.
But I think you should feel powerful and you should feel God in leagues, even if you're a massive noob and you don't know what you're doing.
Yes.
Yeah, and and I think Shane said it, but I think a lot of people also kind of crunch the numbers with Ascension. Like that's kind of the go-to one, and it's like a 20% DPS increase, like overall. And like all the top end PVMers that I would watch or stream, they were freaking out over like, oh my god, this is so good. It's like a 20%, and you're excited about that. Like again, that's good, but like 20% like on top of what you already have. Like again, that feels like it's just the next tier of weapon that dropped or a perk. That's not something that's like, oh my gosh. And
It's
that
not
being said,
blowpipe machine gun.
In old
Right.
school, you get 100% guaranteed accuracy and half the tick rate of like your attack speed is double.
Right. So, my philosophy, which is why I'm like 95% going to go Everlasting Faith, is that Ascension is great. It's going to add, 20% in there. But at any given time, me as a player, I start a boss fight or start PVM, I'm at like 50% in terms of me knowing the fight and being good at PVM. So you give me
Exactly.
20% damage on me already being at like a negative 50% of what I usually would be. I'm sitting at like 75% effective at killing a boss in leagues. I should be able to go in there again, sort of brain dead, knowing mechanics, don't stand in stuff, pray,
Yep.
do what you need to, and be able to do that. I want to be able to walk in with good gear. I don't want to go in with, iron armor and be able to one-shot
Yeah.
Raksha, but I want to be
Oh,
able
no.
to go
Did
in
you ever
with like
do the
tier
Elite
80
Dungeons,
and
Dave?
AFK
Out of
it.
curiosity,
I did.
solo?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
So I started doing matriarchs, right? And I have full bandos. I have a augmented with reasonably good tier gizmos on a crystal halberd. No, sun spear rather, because that's the best I have available right now. I should be able to go to that boss. It still
Yeah.
takes me multiple. It takes me so long to get to
Yeah.
that boss's health, right? It doesn't feel. It feels very much like you say. This could be a normal fight, right? Like this is the duration I expect a normal fight in the game to take. It doesn't
Right.
feel like leagues. That's
Yeah.
I'm fully agreed with you there, and I think that's
20%. I just want to say it's refreshing hearing
No.
you guys say this, coming from old school.
Relics should give you 2x damage, right? Not 20%.
Yeah.
Should give you 2x or 3x damage.
Thaxi
Yeah, I want to be
said 4
slapping
last
50Ks
week, by
on
the way,
people.
when he was on.
What's
Thaxi
that?
said 4. They should give 4x last week.
Fine. Do x 4x. It's
Sure.
fine.
He's
right?
not even
Take
here,
that
and you two are
broken.
trying to outdo each other. But yeah, because I feel like a lot of the concern about power has come from the high-end PVM community, and it's refreshing hearing it from you guys as well.
Yeah. So again, I can talk myself in circles, but I think we're pretty well on the same
No,
page.
and
with...
then this is why I'm still deciding between Everlasting Faith and Ascension. I'm like, oh, like a good DPS increase.
I have a suggestion for you if you reach tier 7.
Quit?
No, don't take Ascension. Take
Okay.
Specialist. It is crazy with melee.
Yeah, but I need to know how to use it, and I need to learn a new thing, and I
Right. Okay, that's the thing, is that I already know what special attacks I'm going to be slotting in that thing and where I'm going to use those, so it is a little
like
bit
this
different.
is the thing with like Guardian Horn, for example, right? Like
Guardian Horn?
in old school, Guardian Horn was a relic that allowed you to basically summon like
the little thrall guy,
familiar.
right?
Yeah, basically a thrall guy, basically a persistent familiar that always attacks in the style that the monster is weak against and did reasonable damage, right? It's so brain dead. I can just turn it on, it works.
Oh, I love that relic. Pick it every time.
Exactly. The other thing is basically you have basically infinite special attack damage. Yeah, in old school, using specials is much more straightforward. It makes sense. And I think the third choice in the tier was if you die, you immediately revive, you do damage to everything around you, and your stats are boosted to 255. Like all of these things, I'm like, that sounds cool. That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Here, get all the God Books effect. I'm like, okay, so I'm just saving myself a grind. Thanks.
Right. It's like, which one is like the best one out of these?
And
Like,
you
oh my
can't even
gosh, I don't know which to
control
pick.
what's going to proc. Like there are
Right.
situations where you might want the AoE of when, but you might get Jazz instead, which is single target.
Right.
And if you're doing Zuck and that goes off on a bat, well, rip.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So.
Yeah, 100% agree.
Okay. Any other final thoughts here?
I do want to say I'm happy that the RSV community got to experience this. It seems to have been, or to be, it's still ongoing, I guess. It seems to be reasonably successful. People seem to like it. I hope the feedback gets
The
taken
player
on board.
count
And
Sorry, I was going to say the player count held constant through the first 3 weeks there, or about.
That's
average.
pretty good. That's
yeah.
Good.
that's pretty good. That's what old school leagues do typically. Like they hold strong for a few weeks and then it tapers off very quickly. I just do think that they need to like. It's good that they looked at what old school did and tried to learn from it, but I think now it is time for them to blaze their own trail, and really start doing things differently. Because I think all of the things we've discussed here are things that work for old school and don't work for RS3 because they're fundamentally different games.
You remember when we were considering doing a monthly bit about what a league would look like in RS3? And you said to me is that we can't just, cherry pick what we want from old school and we have to design something new.
Yes.
And I couldn't get anybody else on board for that topic, and it would have been you and me, so we decided not to do it.
Yes. I love being right. Look, I do think that they need to look at maybe more unorthodox ideas. Start everybody out at level 99 in all skills, and then don't go with like massive XP modifiers, and have the league just focus on that 99 to 120 part of the game. Very unorthodox. I don't know if it will work, but I think that's the kind of ideas they need to start thinking about.
Another thing that came from one of their live streams is that they were considering having each region or area represented by a Mongerat general, and then that would be a specific tailored fight for that league that you would do to unlock passives and benefits for that area. But they didn't get to that. And their take on region locking wasn't going to be like the physical like walls that old school puts up. What their idea for that was use the client and effectively just render that client side so that it's less work in terms of modifying the game world and whatnot, because they didn't need to worry about multiple clients, they said, for that. So they had ideas. It just seems as though they didn't get the time to get to it. So but overall, I'm glad that you guys mostly enjoyed yourself.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed having this discussion here. And hopefully,
it was good.
Hopefully, this is a bit eye-opening to other folks as well. But we do have to, of course, end the show with the pick of the week. I kind of threw this one towards you, Sirion. So what do you got?
Yeah, and I jokingly said the Runelight client as my joke pick of the week. The pick of the week is going to be a very nerdy one, and it's called I actually just realized there's another one I could pick, but that's even nerdier. So I'm gonna save that for future ones and not tell Shane what it is, so he has to get me on another time on the show in the future. The thing I'm gonna have as pick of the week is something that I have used on my Windows PC for like the past few months and has been great. It's called Power Toys. I think it's a very famous app. I think a lot of people know it.
Oh God, yeah. This has been around since Windows XP, and they keep adding to it.
Yes, exactly. And I've never really been using it until a few months ago. I started using it and it's great. The favorite feature of me is the command palette. I use it all the time on my MacBook, my work MacBook.
What? They did one of those?
Yes, it has I just alt space and I'm like, oh, well, here, I still have a calculation in there. 16 divided by 5 is 3.2, apparently.
And this is so much better than the Windows 11 Start menu.
Oh, absolutely. Like a million times
Did you know
better.
that the Windows 11 Start menu is written in React UI?
It doesn't surprise me, and it's horrible, but like it's super, super, super good. The other thing that I use from this, I mean, the color picker is great. I use that every now and then. What is the other thing? I do think I use editor. Yeah.
I used to use Image Resizer a lot on the XP days for screenshots.
Yeah. So those are the main things I'm using it for, as well. I don't really use it for anything else. You do have I do use the mouse highlighter, which is a feature that I used to hate in Mac, but I actually kind of like it right now if I lose my mouse on my different screens.
Mouse without borders.
Oh my God.
It also allows you to. It also has a lot of just add-ons for existing things, like File Explorer, for example. Enabling previews for SVG files. I mean, yes, please.
Oh, God.
Oh, wow.
It's hard to believe that Windows doesn't have that.
No, exactly. It also has it allows previews of like Markdown files, like formatted in like File Explorer, things like that.
See, all these are things that are native to me on Mac OS, and I'm like, oh, if I had some of these, that's one thing we check off the Windows box of needing.
Exactly. I've also stopped using external caffeine tools because PowerToys has one built in.
Explain what you mean by that.
It basically means that your computer doesn't go to sleep automatically. It just stays on indefinitely, which can be useful if you want to watch a movie, for example. And yeah.
Or if you're working on like an iPad or laptop and you just want that up as some kind of like reference material or something like that.
You know, it is really, it's an application with like a million different toys. It does a lot of small things. That's I use only part of it. I'm pretty sure I don't even use the full power of it, but I do recommend just like installing
Fancy
it.
Zones
And then
looks interesting.
So yeah,
that reminds me of certain Linux Windows managers.
Yeah, I think it is called PowerToys because it is for the power user. But yeah, my guess, your audience, Shane.
Yeah,
probably contains a lot of power users. So
especially on Windows, because I do a Mac OS pick sometimes, and I feel like I'm talking to maybe just one or two other people out there. But if we can, get some Windows ones on there,
if you are a Mac
good.
person, leave a comment on Discord or in the YouTube section below and make Shane happy. Make Shane say.
Yeah, well, I mean, I use it primarily for the audio stack, but that's a topic for a different day. We have a series of picks that have been ongoing about how to record your podcast that needs to be updated. I have a bunch in that category, but Microsoft Power Toys, good pick of the week, and all sanctioned, of course, by Microsoft. So good. Well, thank you both for being here. Always good having you on the show. I know the last time we did this was on OSRS update.
It's been a while.
I know we did league stuff, but we had you on sometime earlier this year on that podcast there, Dave. So always good having you. But Sirion, you are in the friends chat. Dave, I don't necessarily know if you are, but if people want to message you, best way, do you want them to?
Just Arcane on in-game. It'd be great.
ARRKIN. Alrighty, well, if you want the next episode of Update delivered automatically to you, head on over to update.show/subscribe. We're on all the major podcast listening services out there, Apple Podcasts, Pocket Casts, Spotify, and YouTube, of course, at youtube.com/RSBANB. But again, Sirion and Dave, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, always glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's been a fun coming back to the show after a long break. So
yeah, I'm glad we got to have this discussion. And if you want more discussions, I know next week's will be a big one because this is coming out the week before the big microtransaction conversation. So that'll be that'll be a big one too. So
no, there will be nothing controversial in that news post whatsoever.
No, there won't be. So if you want if you want to hear our reaction to that, subscribe, and we'll see you guys next week for another episode of RSBANB Update. See you then, everyone. Take care.
Sounds good. See ya.
Bye.